this very important topic, that is India-US trade relations and geopolitical developments. Now, to make you understand, first let me make you understand the basics of tariffs. This is India, this is USA. There is trade between India and USA. Trade means India exports to USA and USA exports to India. The trade is India's exports to USA plus USA's exports to India. This is what trade is. The trade value between India and US currently is somewhere around $131 billion. $131 billion. Now, India has a trade surplus with USA. Means India is exporting more as compared to importing. Okay. India exports more as compared to imports. Therefore, trade surplus. And India is not the only country in the world having trade surplus with USA. Many countries in the world have trade surplus with USA. In fact, overall trade deficit of USA is $1.2 trillion. इतनी तो इकोनॉमी नहीं होती कई देशों की. Now, USA has outsourced secondary sector manufacturing and has kept control of technology and the service sector. Service sector has the highest value generating potential. So, USA is focusing on that area only, which is having the highest value generating potential. Secondary sector requires a lot of natural resources, because industries, they will consume natural resources, they will pollute the environment, they will consume water, they will consume other natural resources. The USA is of this viewpoint कि भाई क्यों करना है? Why to consume our natural resources? Why to pollute our environment by having industries over here? Let's outsource it. We will import the products. Dollar में payment करने, we can manage that because we have the capability to print the dollars as well. ठीक है? Not a problem to us. The entire world is operating on dollars. So, this way. Now, what happened was, Donald Trump came, he became the president. He said that why USA has outsourced manufacturing to other countries. Why can't you manufacture here? If you manufacture here, jobs will be generated, taxes will be collected by the government, and most importantly, we will reduce our imports, we will reduce our dependence upon other countries. Why Apple, why you have to manufacture in China or India? You can manufacture here. And now Apple has said $100 billion investment it is going to do in USA. That makes a total of $600 billion investment by Apple in USA. So things like these. Donald Trump's outlook or Donald Trump's policies are more and more inward looking. Obviously, USA cannot take everything. It has to outsource most of the things. But USA is wanting कि भाई reduce the tariffs on our exports coming to your countries. Now, what are tariffs? Let's suppose we are exporting anything to USA. Our government, means government of India, has the authority to levy export duty on that product. And here, when that product is entering the American markets, the government of USA has the authority to levy import duty on that particular product. Okay. So, export duty plus import duty is collectively termed as tariff. Largely, aspirants believe that import duty is equal to tariff. No, export duty is also counted as tariff. Okay. Now, we were negotiating a trade deal with USA. Now, what happens in a trade deal? We lower the tariffs by mutual discussion कि भाई on which product or which item of trade we have to lower, or on which item of trade we have to keep it higher. Now, USA is pressurizing India to lower the import duties on agri products and make it part of the trade deal. Agri products, USA is making or producing agricultural products which are cheap, very cheap, because in USA the average land holding size is huge. Mechanized farming is being practiced over there, thereby leading to cheaper agricultural products. And genetically modified agricultural products are also found over there. Now USA is pressurizing India to open its agricultural market for the American products. American products, cheap American products, if they enter the Indian markets, obviously the Indians will go for buying the cheaper products because this is consumer behavior, normal consumer behavior. And in case of India, a tag of imported is there on those products. So those products will sell faster. Who will buy the products of our farmers? Nobody will, or less people will. हर कोई अपनी जेब बचाएगा. So there India is not agreeing, and that is why Prime Minister said that मैं खड़ा हूं दीवार बनके अपने किसान भाइयों, मछुआरों या फिर जो हॉर्टिकल्चरिस्ट है उनके सामने. This is the main issue. This is the main bone of contention. Why that trade deal was not signed. Apart from it, non-tariff barriers like certain laws which USA finds too much restricted in India, which are not letting the US firms to do business over here. So these are some of the things which USA feels are there, and that is why, on 30th July 2025, US President Donald Trump announced 25% tariffs on India, effective from August 1, 2025, accompanied by an unspecified penalty. That unspecified penalty was secondary sanctions of 25% additional tariffs. So 25 plus 25, now 50%. Tariff is reportedly an addition over the existing baseline tariff of 10%, making India's effective tariff one of the highest imposed by the US on any country. And if tariff is imposed by US, Indian products which were earlier being subjected to lower tariffs will now be subjected to higher tariffs. Means their products, their cost will go up, and when their cost will go up, their demand will come down, obviously. And similar kind of products are coming from other countries, their cost will be less because they are subjected to less tariffs, and their productivity or their consumption will increase. The move comes amidst ongoing India-US trade talks, 6th round scheduled in August, which have been stuck mainly on sensitive sectors like agriculture and dairy. So this is basically what you can see. Chart shows India's top 5 exports to US between January and May 2025. Electrical machinery, pharmaceutical products, generic medicines we supply a lot, nuclear machinery, pearls and precious stones, mineral fuels. Mineral fuels means refined petroleum. Okay. We have over the years done relatively little business with them, that is India, because their tariffs are far too high, among the highest in the world. Donald Trump, this is what this guy has to say. Reasons cited by the US for imposing these tariffs: India's continued purchase of energy and military equipment from Russia. Those additional 25%, this was the reason. India's high tariffs on American goods and other non-monetary trade barriers perceived by the US as obstructive. It says that India's tariff is also high. If India is imposing more tariffs on American goods coming to India, around 52% or 50%, we will impose like that only. The US accuses India of maintaining protectionist policies that hinder fair trade access. US goods trade deficit with India stood at $45.7 billion in 2024, up 5.4% from 2023. So this was the trade deficit in goods only. Abhi to services ka baki. The Trump administration views this rising deficit as evidence of an unfair trading relationship, using it as a key justification for tariff imposition. It says that if India is imposing so high tariffs on American goods entering the Indian market, why can't America impose high tariffs on Indian goods entering the American market? So tit for tat it is. India's BRICS membership is also a concern for Donald Trump, because he believes that BRICS is the biggest challenge to America nowadays. He feels that BRICS is leading to the decline of dollar. It is leading to, or it is posing challenges to the hegemony of the West, whereas India is the founding member of BRICS. So it is there. It is challenging the US dollar hegemony. It raises concerns. BRICS initiatives on alternative payment systems and trade mechanisms threaten US influence over global trade and finance. India-Russia defense and energy ties. US plans a penalty linked to India's defense and energy imports from Russia, aligned with Russian Sanctions Act 2025, which contemplates up to 500% duties on countries importing Russian petroleum products. USA itself imports some products from Russia. And when this question was asked from Mr. Donald Trump, he ducked this question. He said that I am not aware about it, I'll have to look into it. This undefined penalty aims to maximize leverage over India during trade talks. Economic and sectoral impact. US is India's largest export market, accounting for about 18% of goods exports. Definitely this will be impacted, and here can be a loss to India. Elevated tariffs could reduce India's GDP growth by 0.2 to 0.3 percentage points. Not much, but yes, this can be there. But credit rating agencies like Standards and Poor's and all, they are saying that India's economic growth rate will not be impacted. Labor intensive sectors as gems and jewelry, textiles, clothing and mobile phones. Then copper exports to US may decline. However, India's large domestic consumption could absorb this dip. India-US trade relationship overview. US is India's largest trading partner, with bilateral trade valued at $131.84 billion in 2024-25. So as I told you, USA is our largest trading partner. Both nations aspire to expand this to $500 billion by 2030 through a multi-sectoral bilateral trade agreement, but this trade agreement has met a roadblock as of now. Now this is, in this table there are these sectors which are impacted. Electronics and tech. India is the largest exporter of iPhones to the US, 44% share in Q2. Donald Trump threatened Tim Cook that if you don't invest here, I will impose 25% tariffs on iPhones coming from India. Now they are there, part of those tariffs, and $100 billion investment has also come from Tim Cook. It is arm twisting. You are there in power, you have the authority to do that, and you twist the arms, you make your decisions. So electronics and tech. India is the largest exporter of iPhones to the US, 44% share in Q2 2025. Tariffs jeopardize Apple's plans to increase Indian manufacturing capacity to 60 million units. That will be impacted. Pharmaceuticals, largest exporter of generic drugs to the US, supplying 50% of the US market. Tariff threatens margin sensitive pharma exports. Gems and jewelry, US accounts for over 30% of India's global jewelry exports. Higher tariffs risk supply chain disruptions. Textile and apparel, facing calls to halt shipments due to 25% tariff induced price hikes, risks losing market share to regional competitors like Bangladesh, Vietnam. Ready-made garments, they also ship. Now, in all these sectors, definitely India is going to be impacted, no doubt. Job creation and all can be impacted, no doubt. But America will also be impacted. It is not like only India will be impacted. Inflation will be there. There might be some products in these sectors where there are no alternates apart from India. Or if there are alternates, they are not able to meet the demand of the Americans. They will have to depend upon Indian imports. Because this is a historic dependence of America on Indian imports. You cannot just overcome this quickly, overnight. It will take time, and for that time, there will be impact on American economy. And how that impact plays a role will define the future generation, I would say, relations between India and America. That is obviously an impulsive decision taken by the Donald Trump administration. Most of the decisions are impulsive only. But they know that there will be an impact. Why did not they, impose tariffs on China? China imports more energy from Russia than we do. Why? Because dependency on China is huge. The stakes of China are high. India-US trade is $131 billion. You know how much is US-China trade? It is more than $600 billion. Almost 5 to 6 times than India-US trade. And trade surplus is there with China. Huge trade surplus. Or huge trade deficit for US, we can say. Now, if US imposes sanctions on Chinese goods, then, US economy can collapse because they will all become expensive. They're already being subject to 30% tariffs on an average. India's response is being termed as a pragmatic response. Pragmatic and strategic partnership India wants to pursue. India has avoided tit for tat retaliation. Tit for tat means we also raise the tariffs on American goods entering our country. No, we did not do that. You might, or many might, perceive this as, a cowardly act. But if you watch closely, we have increased our engagements with other countries in the world, like Brazil, like China, like Russia. Russia, so we are saying कि भाई आप आने दो तेल, you let the oil come, we are not reducing it. Before these tariffs were imposed, India's imports of oil from Russia were already on a declining trend. After these tariffs, we started to reduce the imports from Russia. That is wrong. It is a wrong narrative which is being built by the media. The facts, according to Ministry of Petroleum and according to the past data, this data was already there in domain before the sanctions were imposed, our imports were reducing. They were on a declining trend from Russia. Currently, 36% of our oil comes from Russia. At one point of time, it was 40%. It was like this. India reiterates the need for a fair, balanced and mutually beneficial trade agreement by accommodating our concerns, particularly related to agricultural domain. Willing to reduce tariffs on select industrial goods and offer concessions in areas like public procurement and agriculture if matched by the US. We also increased imports of US oil, crude oil, by over 270% year on year in early 2025. Just to give them a message that we are increasing imports from you. We are not wanting, or we are not, intending to increase the trade deficit. We are intending to increase overall trade. India rejected the notion that its membership in BRICS or dealings with Russia are anti-American, emphasizing de-dollarization and trade in domestic currencies are risk management tools. These are risk management tools where how we are managing our risks. India continues to maintain a strong defense partnership with the US despite the tariff tensions. A military exercise is also planned. Contentious issues in India and US trade talks. First contentious issue was agriculture and dairy, where USA was wanting to, reduce the tariff lines in these sectors, and it was also demanding export of GM crops to India, whereas in India there is only one GM crop which is allowed for commercial cultivation, that is cotton. No other GM crops, and cotton is not consumed. So this is there. US insists on market access for GM products, viewing India's strict regulations as discriminatory in nature. We don't open. Given agriculture's socio-economic importance in India, this impasse is difficult to resolve quickly. This is not going to be resolved because majority of our workforce is in the agricultural sector. Trade concessions and timings. Negotiations are eyeing a tentative timeline for an interim trade deal by October 2025. Let's see what happens. Negotiations are on. If the final tariff on India is capped between 10 to 15%, similar to UK and Japan, India may view the deal as acceptable, and agricultural products are kept out of the purview of reducing tariffs. Tariffs above 15%, nearing Vietnam's 20%, would reduce deals' attractiveness, especially with the risk of transshipment rules affecting export inputs sourced from other countries, including China. Transshipment rules means rules of origin. India is exporting an item to USA, let's suppose a garment. But for that garment, the raw material or even the t-shirt, we are just labeling that t-shirt over here. The basic t-shirt has been imported from China. That is, that will not come under trade agreement because we are only doing labeling. So these transshipment rules will also be applicable. US-Pakistan rapprochement, that is happening. Alongside tariffs on India, Trump announced a US-Pakistan trade deal with a 19% tariff, lower than India's 25%. Trump is, promoting Pakistan just to downgrade India. Why? Because India is not coming to the terms and conditions of USA. India is not bound down to the pressure of USA. Trump also touted cooperation on developing Pakistan's massive oil reserves, implying strategic economic partnerships. Where are these massive oil reserves? Only Donald Trump knows, Pakistan knows. Indian concerns. India views the US-Pakistan reset with suspicion, noting Pakistan's deep mistrust and antagonistic history. Pakistan's rapid engagement with Trump's inner circle, including investments in the US cryptocurrency firms and diplomatic gestures, suggests a strategic recalibration by Islamabad. Means Pakistan is nearing or increasing its closeness with the Trump administration. And obviously that is something which is not a good news for India. Delhi questions whether US will rebalance its South Asia policy more favorably towards Pakistan. If it does, then it will undermine India's interests. The ongoing US defense support to Pakistan, like F-16 jets, adds to Delhi's strategic unease. US tariff policy and preferential treatment to competitors. India 25% plus 25% additional tariffs. And this is the price we are paying for having good friendship with Russia. Pakistan 19%, Bangladesh 20%. Now, Bangladesh is a key competitor in ready-made garments, RMG. India's shipment versus Bangladesh's shipment. Bangladesh's shipment should be or will be promoted. Vietnam 20%. ASEAN competitor, affects electronics and manufacturing sector. Malaysia, Indonesia and Philippines 19%. ASEAN competitors, challenges India in electronics and footwear. China 30%, highest tariff but ongoing complex negotiations with China. Let's see what happens, and China is a major supplier of many goods. So tariffs over other countries like EU, Japan, South Korea, Trump's administration imposed lower tariffs on over 50 countries compared to India's 25%. Pakistan and Bangladesh, India's direct competitors in various sectors, face tariffs of 19 and 20%. Other ASEAN countries, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, 19% each, have been assigned preferential tariffs. This preferential tariff structure gives these countries a competitive advantage over India in the US market, because demand for the products of these countries will be more than the demand of the products of India, because Indian products are inviting higher tariffs. Notably, Bangladesh's lower tariffs could hurt India's ready-made garments, as I told you. Vietnam, Malaysia and others could capture greater shares in electrical, electronics and non-leather footwear. Already discussed in that table these things. Implications. India's exports risk losing competitiveness, especially in labor-intensive sectors like textiles, electronics, footwear and garments. Tariffs come into effect August 7, 2025, putting immediate pressure on Indian exporters. The tariff differential could lead to trade diversion, with US buyers sourcing more from competitors with lower tariffs. This policy reflects US frustration with slow progress of India-US trade talks. There is one major point on which these trade talks are, stuck, that is agriculture and dairy and fisheries. India-China tariff differential, 30% tariff on Chinese products, higher than India's 25% plus This 25% additional will make India's tariff higher. US-China trade talks are ongoing, but without major breakthroughs. The tariff truce was extended for 90 days in Stockholm talks. Let's see what happens with the end of this 90 days. India hopes for a 10 to 20% tariff advantage relative to China, but this 10 to 20% tariff advantage has been gone because of the additional tariffs which have been imposed on India. India closely monitors US port level tariffs on Chinese imports to find export opportunities. USA's penalties on India's Russian energy and defense imports. 100% secondary tariffs means 25% पहले लगाया था. 25% का 100% is 25%. 25% additional tariff. India imports 36% of its oil from Russia, a figure that had been declining prior to US announcement. Defense dependency on Russia remains significant, a legacy of Soviet-era ties. However, India has diversified to other suppliers, including the US. India is importing a lot of arms and ammunition from US as well. India's stand. India insists its bilateral ties with Russia are sovereign and based on strategic and security needs. We will keep it. We are to decide whether we want to keep it or not, and how much ever we want to keep. We have been deciding it since the Cold War era. And USA had a problem since the Cold War era. We did not bow down to that pressure. Defense purchases are driven by national security imperatives, not external pressures. India has already curtailed Iranian oil imports under previous US sanctions. Previously, we succumbed under the pressure of US and we stopped importing oil from Iran. That hurted us a lot because we settled the payments of Iran oil imports in rupees. And probably that was the reason why USA was not liking it. And this is how Dadagiri of USA happens. But now we are not going to succumb. Enough is enough. This is, the entire world is saying. And it is also being projected that India, Russia and China will come closer because of these kind of policies of Donald Trump. US military posturing. Trump ordered 2 US nuclear submarines to move closer to Russia due to Moscow's rejection of an August 8 ceasefire deadline in Ukraine war. The move follows hostile exchanges between Trump and Russia's Dmitry Medvedev, with nuclear threats exchanged between the two. The US and NATO are developing new mechanisms to supply Ukraine with weapons using NATO funds. They have been doing it since 2022. Russia controls about 20% of Ukraine's territory, demands Kyiv's capitulation and insists on Ukraine's permanent neutrality. Not joining NATO, not joining the West, not joining the EU. Kyiv demands a full Russian withdrawal and seeks NATO membership. Now this is an impasse between both, and that is why in that meeting between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, no such conclusion was achieved. Strategic and policy implications. India's pragmatism. Despite US pressure, India balances economic interests, strategic autonomy and global partnership. Trade negotiations. India remains firm on protecting sensitive sectors while seeking to expand market access. US-Pakistan ties. India must carefully monitor and respond to evolving US-South Asia dynamics. Russia-Ukraine conflict. India maintains neutrality, balancing ties with Russia and the West amid escalating tensions. Global trade patterns. India's competitiveness in the US market is challenged by preferential tariffs given to other countries, but we can expand or increase our exports to other countries. Long-term outlook. The developments underscore the complex interplay of trade, geopolitics and strategic partnership in a multipolar world and a dependent world. These are the things which you need to know and understand in detail about these tariffs imposed by Mr. Donald Trump on India.